The mining station Kepler 442b orbited a dying red dwarf star at the edge of human space. Captain Sarah Chen had been stationed there for 3 years, overseeing the extraction of rare earth minerals that kept the human colonies running. The work was boring, dangerous, and far from the excitement of the inner systems. Most days, she wondered why she had volunteered for this assignment. The station housed 230 humans, along with a small population of alien workers from various species who had signed trade agreements with Earth. Among them was Zix, a young Vorthak whose species resembled large, furry otters with 6 limbs and brilliant purple eyes. Zix was barely past adolescence by his species standards, eager to learn and endlessly curious about human customs. Sarah found the young alien's enthusiasm refreshing. While most of the other species kept to themselves, forming tight cultural groups, Zix spent his free time in the human quarters, asking endless questions about Earth, human history, and why humans seemed so different from every other species he had encountered. "Captain Chen," Zix would often say in his melodic voice, "why do humans always prepare for conflicts that may never come? The other species in this sector focus on trade, art, and peaceful expansion. But humans, you build weapons even in mining stations." Sarah would usually laugh and ruffle the soft fur between his ears, a gesture that Zix had grown to appreciate. "Better safe than sorry, little guy. The universe isn't always as peaceful as we'd like it to be." The conversation had become routine between them. Zix's species, the Vorthak, had never experienced major warfare. They had evolved on a world with abundant resources and few natural predators. Conflict, to them, was something settled through elaborate verbal debates that could last for days. The concept of violence as a solution was as foreign to them as breathing underwater was to humans. This fundamental difference in worldview fascinated both Sarah and Zix. The young Vorthak would often observe human training exercises with wide, curious eyes. He watched as the security teams ran combat drills, practiced with various weapons, and maintained constant vigilance even in the relative safety of their remote mining operation. "Your species is strange, Captain," Zix had once observed. "You are kind and generous, yet you train for war. You build beautiful things, yet you prepare to destroy. I do not understand this contradiction." Sarah had tried to explain the harsh realities that had shaped human history. The wars, the invasions, the countless times that peaceful civilizations had fallen to more aggressive ones. But to a species that had never faced such threats, her words seemed like stories from a nightmare rather than historical fact. The Kepler station was a perfect example of human pragmatism. On the surface, it appeared to be a simple mining operation, but hidden beneath the industrial facade were military-grade shields, weapon systems, and enough firepower to hold off a small fleet. Most of the alien workers didn't even know about these defenses. They saw only the mining equipment, the processing plants, and the comfortable living quarters. But Zix was observant. During his months at the station, he had begun to notice things that others missed. Emergency protocols that seemed too elaborate for simple industrial accidents. Training exercises that looked suspiciously like combat preparation. Security measures that went far beyond what was needed to protect mining equipment. "Why do your cargo ships have weapon ports?" he asked one day while watching a supply vessel dock with the station. Sarah paused in her work, considering how to answer. "Standard precaution, pirates, asteroids, that sort of thing. The Zelani cargo ships do not have weapons, neither do the Threx vessels. Only human ships seem to carry such armaments." It was true, and Sarah knew it. Humans were the only species in this sector that routinely armed their civilian vessels. To the other races, it seemed like paranoid overreaction. The galaxy had been at peace for nearly a century. Trade routes were safe, conflicts were rare, and most disputes were settled through diplomatic channels. The human approach seemed wasteful and aggressive to most aliens. Why spend resources on weapons when those same resources could be used for art, science, or improving quality of life? The question came up frequently in interspecies diplomatic discussions, with human representatives struggling to explain their species' apparent obsession with military preparedness. But Captain Chen and the other humans on the station understood something that their alien colleagues didn't. Peace was not a natural state of the universe. It was something that had to be actively maintained, defended, and sometimes fought for. The current era of galactic peace existed because various species had reached a balance of power and mutual benefit through trade. That balance was fragile. Sarah had studied the historical records from Earth's expansion into space. She knew about the early encounters with hostile alien species, the colonies that had been lost to raiders, and the hard-won lessons about the importance of being prepared for the worst. Most of the current alien species in this sector had joined the galactic community during the peaceful era. They had no memory of the chaos and violence that had preceded it. The Vorthak, in particular, had been space-faring for only 50 years. They had emerged into a galaxy where trade agreements and diplomatic treaties governed interspecies relations. To them, the idea of one species attacking another seemed as absurd as the idea of the sun deciding to reverse its rotation. This naivety worried Sarah more than she cared to admit. In her experience, when societies became too comfortable with peace, they often forgot how to defend it. The galaxy was vast, and beyond the well-traveled trade routes lay countless worlds and species that remained unknown. Not all of them would necessarily share the peaceful intentions of the current galactic community. Zix's questions had started to focus on these preparations with increasing frequency. The young Vorthak had a quick mind and an eye for detail that impressed Sarah. He could spot inconsistencies in official explanations and had begun to piece together the true nature of the station's defenses. "Captain," he said one evening as they shared a meal in the station's common area, "I have been thinking about our conversations regarding human preparedness." "Oh," Sarah tried to keep her tone casual, but she could see the serious expression in Zix's purple eyes. "I believe I understand now why your species thinks differently about peace and conflict. You have experience with both, while mine has only known one. But this makes me wonder about something else." Sarah waited for him to continue, nodding how the young alien's usual enthusiasm had been replaced by something more thoughtful, almost worried. "If humans, with all your defensive preparations, choose to build such elaborate safety measures even in peaceful times, what does that suggest about the universe beyond our current knowledge? Are there threats out there that justify such caution?" The question hit closer to the mark than Sarah was comfortable with. The truth was that human intelligence services had been tracking concerning signals from beyond the explored sectors for months. Strange energy signatures, unexplained disappearances of exploration vessels, and reports from long-range scouts that didn't match any known species or phenomena. But that information was classified, known only to senior command staff and intelligence operatives. The alien workers on the station, including Zix, had no security clearance for such matters. The official policy was to maintain normal operations and avoid causing panic over what might turn out to be nothing more than cosmic anomalies. "The universe is a big place, Zix," Sarah said carefully. "We like to be prepared for possibilities, even unlikely ones." But Zix had grown too perceptive to accept such vague answers. His species might be peaceful, but they were also highly intelligent and naturally curious. He had been observing human behavior for months, and he could read the subtle signs of tension that had been building among the human crew. "Captain Chen, may I ask you something directly?" "Of course. Are you expecting trouble?" Sarah met his gaze and saw genuine concern there. Not fear exactly, but the kind of worry that came from caring about the safety of others. Despite his young age, Zix had formed strong bonds with many of the humans on the station. They had become his friends, his teachers, and in many ways, his adopted family. "We're always expecting trouble, Zix. That's how we stay safe." But lately, the humans have been more watchful, more tense. The training exercises have increased, and I have noticed that Captain Rodriguez has been spending more time in the communications center. These are not normal patterns. Sarah realized that she had underestimated the young Vorthak's observational skills. He had been watching them far more carefully than anyone had realized, cataloging changes in behavior and routine that most would have missed. "You're very perceptive," she admitted. "My species values awareness of our environment. We may not be warriors, but we are excellent observers. And what I have observed suggests that the humans on this station are preparing for something specific, not just maintaining general readiness." Sarah looked around the common area, noting how several other crew members were within earshot. This wasn't the place for a detailed discussion of classified intelligence reports, but Zix deserved some level of honesty, especially given how much he had already figured out on his own. "Walk with me," she said, standing up from the table. They left the common area and headed toward the observation deck. one of the few places on the station where they could talk privately. Through the massive viewport, the red dwarf star cast its dim light across the mining operation, creating long shadows that seemed to stretch toward the unknown darkness of deep space. "Zix," Sarah began, choosing her words carefully, "you're right that we've been more alert recently. There have been some unusual readings from the outer sensor arrays. Probably nothing serious, but it's our job to investigate anything that seems out of the ordinary." "What kind of readings?" "Energy signatures that don't match any known natural phenomena or technology. Could be a new type of pulsar, could be experimental drives from one of the outer colonies. Most likely, it's something completely harmless that we just haven't encountered before." Zix nodded slowly, processing this information. "But human caution suggests you believe it could be something more concerning." "Human caution suggests we don't take chances with the safety of the people under our protection." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the stars beyond the mining operation. Sarah found herself wondering what was really out there, beyond the range of their sensors and the boundaries of explored space. The galaxy was ancient and vast, filled with countless civilizations that had risen and fallen long before humans had even developed agriculture. "Captain," Zix said quietly, "if there is danger approaching, will you tell me? My species may not be warriors, but we are not helpless. We have other skills that might be useful." Sarah looked down at the young alien, seeing something new in his expression. The innocent curiosity was still there, but it was now tempered with a determination that reminded her that despite his youthful appearance, Zix was a sentient being with his own sense of responsibility and courage. "I promise that if there's real danger, you'll know about it. But for now, let's hope that our preparations remain just preparations." As they watched the stars, neither of them noticed the subtle changes in the sensor readings that were being detected by the station's automated systems. Deep in the communications center, warning signals were beginning to flash on screens that no one was currently monitoring. Something was moving in the darkness between the stars, something that didn't belong in the peaceful trading routes of this sector. And it was moving with purpose and speed that suggested intelligence, organization, and possibly hostile intent. The age of peace that had defined this region of the galaxy for nearly a century was about to come to an abrupt and violent end. But for now, in the quiet observation deck of a remote mining station, a human captain and a young alien stood together, watching the stars and hoping that the universe would remain as peaceful as it appeared. The emergency klaxon shattered the peaceful routine of Kepler Station at 3:47 hours. Captain Sarah Chen bolted upright in her quarters, instantly alert despite having been in deep sleep moments before. Years of military training had conditioned her to respond immediately to such alarms, and the distinctive pattern of the klaxon told her this was not a drill. She reached her command center in less than 3 minutes, still pulling on her uniform jacket as she burst through the doors. The night shift crew was already at their stations, faces illuminated by the red emergency lighting that bathed the entire command center in an ominous glow. "Report," Sarah barked, sliding into her command chair and bringing up the main tactical display. Lieutenant Rodriguez turned from the sensor station, his face pale. "Captain, we're detecting massive energy signatures approaching from Sector 77 Alpha. Multiple contacts, moving at .87 light speed, estimated arrival in 4 hours and 26 minutes. Sarah felt ice form in her stomach. .87 light speed was faster than anything in the known galaxy could travel, at least anything that belonged to the peaceful trading species of this sector. No known civilization had developed drives capable of such velocity, and certainly not for multiple large vessels. "Configuration analysis," she demanded. "Unknown design architecture. The energy signatures don't match any ship class in our databases. But Captain," Rodriguez paused, consulting his readouts again, "the mass displacement readings suggest these are not exploration or trading vessels. Based on the energy distribution patterns, they appear to be configured for combat operations." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Sarah stared at the tactical display, watching as the computer updated the approaching fleet's trajectory. They were heading directly for Kepler Station, not deviating toward any of the other installations or populated worlds in the system. "How many contacts?" she asked. 17 confirmed, possibly more. The interference from their drive systems is making precise counting difficult." 17 unknown warships approaching a mining station with 230 souls aboard. Sarah's mind raced through their defensive options, none of which offered much hope against such overwhelming odds. Kepler Station's weapons were designed to deal with pirates or raiders, not a full military fleet. Communications send an immediate priority alert to Earth Command and all human colonies in this sector. Full tactical data package, all sensor readings, estimated time of arrival. I Captain transmitting now. Engineering, bring all defensive systems online. I want shields at maximum, all weapon systems charged and ready, and the reactor pushed to 110% output. Captain, called Ensign Martinez from the communications station, I'm receiving panic transmissions from the civilian quarters. The alien workers are asking what's happening. Should I respond? Sarah considered this. The alien species on the station had no experience with military threats. The Vorthak, Zelani, and Threx workers would be confused and frightened by the sudden activation of the station's defensive systems, but they deserved to know what they were facing. Patch me through to the station-wide communications system. A moment later, her voice echoed through every corridor, quarters, and workspace on Kepler Station. Attention all personnel. This is Captain Chen. We have detected approaching vessels of unknown origin and hostile configuration. All human personnel report to designated emergency stations immediately. All civilian workers remain in quarters until further notice. This is not a drill. As Sarah closed the channel, she noticed Zix standing in the doorway of the command center. The young Vorthak's purple eyes were wide with concern, but there was no panic in his expression, only focused attention. Captain Chen, he said in his melodic voice, may I assist in some way? Zix, you should be in the civilian quarters with the others. It's safer there. Captain, with respect, I believe I can be of greater use here. My species has exceptional sensory capabilities, particularly in detecting patterns and anomalies. If these approaching vessels have characteristics that your sensors might miss, I could provide additional analysis. Sarah looked at the young alien, remembering his perceptive questions from recent weeks. His ability to notice subtle changes and patterns had already proven valuable, and if their situation was as desperate as it appeared, they would need every advantage they could get. Very well, take the auxiliary sensor station, but if I tell you to evacuate, you go immediately. No arguments. Understood, Captain. Zix moved to the indicated station with surprising grace, his 6 limbs allowing him to interface with the controls more efficiently than most humanoid species. Within moments, he was analyzing the incoming sensor data with an intensity that impressed the human crew. Captain, he said after several minutes of study, I am detecting something unusual in the energy signatures of these vessels. Elaborate. The power distribution is not consistent with exploration or even standard military configurations. The energy patterns suggest these ships are designed primarily for one purpose: the complete destruction of space-based installations and settlements. Lieutenant Rodriguez looked up from his console. He's right, Captain. Now that I'm looking at the data from that perspective, the energy focus is concentrated in what appear to be heavy bombardment systems. These aren't invasion ships or occupation forces. They're designed for annihilation. The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. This wasn't a territorial expansion or a resource grab. Whatever species was approaching intended to completely destroy Kepler Station and everyone aboard it. The question was why. Any indication of their origin? Sarah asked. Zix's fingers danced across his console, his natural pattern recognition abilities allowing him to process the complex sensor data faster than the station's computers. Captain, I'm detecting trace elements in their engine emissions that do not match any known stellar metallurgy from this region of the galaxy. These vessels have traveled a significant distance to reach us. How significant? Based on the isotope decay patterns, I estimate they have been traveling for at least 6 months, possibly longer. This was a planned expedition, not a random encounter. The command center fell silent as the implications sank in. An unknown species had spent months traveling across the galaxy specifically to attack human installations. This wasn't opportunistic aggression. It was the opening move in what could only be described as a war of extermination. Captain, Rodriguez called out, I'm detecting similar fleet configurations approaching other human colonies. Tau Ceti, Ross 128, Proxima Centauri, all under simultaneous attack. Sarah's blood turned to ice. This wasn't an isolated assault on Kepler Station. It was a coordinated strike against human civilization itself. Whoever these attackers were, they had planned and executed a galaxy-wide offensive against humanity. "How long until the nearest human naval forces can reach us?" she asked. "Minimum 18 hours for the patrol squadron from Vega. The main battle fleet is at least 36 hours away." Sarah stared at the tactical display, watching the red icons of the approaching enemy fleet grow larger as they drew closer to the station. 18 hours was far too long. The enemy would arrive in less than 4 hours, and even if they could somehow hold out against 17 warships, it would be a miracle if anyone survived. "Captain Chen," Zix said quietly, "there is something else." "What is it?" "I have been analyzing the approach vectors of all the fleets attacking human colonies. The timing and coordination suggest a level of intelligence gathering that could only have been accomplished through extensive observation of human activities." "You mean they've been watching us?" "For a considerable time, yes. They know our defensive capabilities, our response times, and our military deployment patterns. This attack was planned with detailed knowledge of human civilization. The betrayal was almost worse than the military threat. Somewhere, somehow, an unknown species had been studying humanity for months or years, cataloging their weaknesses and planning their destruction. The age of peaceful coexistence had been a lie, at least from the perspective of these attackers. "Captain," Martinez called from communications, "I'm receiving a transmission from the approaching fleet. Audio only, translated through our linguistic computers." "Put it through." The voice that emerged from the speakers was harsh, mechanical, and utterly alien. It spoke in a language that had never been heard by human ears, but the translation software rendered it into cold, emotionless words. "Human infestation of this galaxy sector will be terminated. Your species represents a contamination that threatens proper galactic order. Surrender is not acceptable. Evacuation is not permitted. Extermination protocols will be implemented upon arrival." Silence filled the command center as the transmission ended. The message was clear and horrifying. This wasn't about territory or resources. It was about the complete elimination of humanity from this region of space. "Well," Sarah said grimly, "at least we know where we stand." "Captain," Zix said, his voice uncharacteristically intense, "my species may not understand warfare, but we understand survival. What can we do to help?" Sarah looked at the young Vorthak, seeing courage and determination in his alien features. Around the command center, her human crew was preparing for a battle they could not win, yet none of them showed any sign of panic or despair. The situation was hopeless, but they would fight anyway because that was what humans did. "Zix, I need you to contact the other alien workers on the station. Explain the situation to them. Make it clear that this threat isn't just against humans. If these attackers are willing to commit genocide against one species, they won't hesitate to do the same to others." "You want me to organize the alien civilian population?" "I want you to give them a choice. They can stay in the civilian quarters and hope for the best, or they can help us prepare for what's coming. Every species on this station has skills and abilities that could be useful in defending our home." Zix nodded solemnly. "I will speak to them immediately." As the young Vorthak left the command center to rally the alien workers, Sarah turned back to the tactical display. The enemy fleet was now less than 3 hours away, and their intentions were absolutely clear. But humans had faced impossible odds before and survived through determination, ingenuity, and the refusal to give up when everything seemed lost. "All stations prepare for battle," she announced. "We may be outnumbered and outgunned, but we're not going down without a fight. Let's show these bastards what happens when they threaten our home." The next 3 hours would determine not just the fate of Kepler Station, but potentially the survival of human civilization in this sector of the galaxy. As the crew prepared their defenses, none of them realized that the actions of one young alien would soon change the course of the entire conflict. Zix had left to rally the other species aboard the station, but he was carrying with him knowledge and insights that would prove far more valuable than anyone could have imagined. The approaching enemy had made one critical mistake in their calculations, and that mistake was about to cost them everything. Zix moved through the station's corridors with purpose, his 6 limbs carrying him swiftly between the civilian quarters where his fellow aliens had taken shelter. The emergency lighting cast strange shadows, and the constant hum of the station's newly activated defensive systems created an atmosphere of tension that none of the peaceful species had ever experienced. In the Zelani quarters, he found the graceful, crystalline beings huddled together, their translucent bodies flickering with nervous energy patterns. The Zelani were artists and philosophers, a species that communicated through beautiful light displays and had never known conflict more serious than aesthetic disagreements. Honored friends, Zix addressed them in their preferred formal style, we face a threat that extends beyond humanity. The approaching fleet has declared their intention to commit genocide. If they succeed against the humans, our species will likely face the same fate. The eldest Zelani, her crystal form shimmering with worried purple hues, responded in their musical language. Young Vorthak, our people have no knowledge of warfare. We are creators, not destroyers. What could we possibly do against such forces? Your ability to manipulate electromagnetic frequencies, Zix explained. The humans' shield generators operate on similar principles. With your help, they could potentially strengthen their defenses beyond normal parameters. In the Threx section, he found the insectoid engineers already analyzing the station's defensive systems. The Threx were naturally curious about technology, and the sudden activation of previously hidden military hardware had captured their attention. Zix's friend, clicked Vorthak, the lead Threx engineer, human-built weapons are fascinating. Hidden redundancies, backup systems within backup systems, very different from our approach to engineering. Will you help them optimize these systems? Zix asked. Of course, Threx always help friends, but we wonder why humans built such elaborate defenses for simple mining station. Humans knew this day might come, yes. The observation struck Zix with sudden clarity. The humans had indeed known this day might come. Not specifically, perhaps, but they had prepared for it with the kind of thoroughness that spoke of deep, species-level understanding of conflict and survival. As he moved between the alien quarters, organizing their various contributions to the defense effort, Zix found his mind racing with new insights about human nature and the approaching threat. The pattern recognition abilities that his species prized so highly were working overtime, connecting disparate pieces of information into a larger picture that was both terrifying and inspiring. The attackers had made their plans based on detailed observation of human military capabilities and response times. They knew about human weapons, human tactics, and human defensive installations. But they had made one critical assumption that was about to prove fatal. They had assumed that humans would fight alone. Every species in the galaxy had developed along different evolutionary paths, resulting in unique abilities and perspectives. The attacking fleet had planned for human resistance, but they had no data on what happened when humans fought alongside species with completely different capabilities. Zix returned to the command center to find the human crew working with desperate efficiency. The tactical display now showed the enemy fleet only 40 minutes away, their massive ships growing larger with each update. Captain Chen, he reported, the alien workers have agreed to assist. The Zelani are working with your shield technicians to create electromagnetic resonance amplifiers. The Threx are optimizing your weapon systems and have already increased firing rate efficiency by 18%. Outstanding, Sarah replied, though her attention remained fixed on the approaching threat. What about your people, Zix? What can the Vorthak contribute? Zix hesitated for a moment, then made a decision that would change everything. Captain, my species has abilities that we have not mentioned to other galactic civilizations. We have always been peaceful, so there seemed no need to reveal them. Sarah turned to look at him directly. What kind of abilities? Pattern recognition is our greatest strength, but it extends beyond simple observation. We can detect and analyze quantum resonance patterns at the subatomic level. We can read the quantum signatures of matter and energy in ways that no other known species can match. And that helps us how? Every ship, every weapon, every piece of technology has a unique quantum signature. If I can analyze the approaching fleet signatures, I can predict their capabilities, their weaknesses, and potentially even their origins. Lieutenant Rodriguez looked up from his console. The sensor data from the fleet is available on the main computer. How long would you need? Give me 10 minutes. Zix connected himself to the station's sensor array through a direct neural interface, something his species rarely revealed to others. His consciousness expanded beyond his physical form, flowing through the quantum streams of data that surrounded the approaching enemy fleet. What he found there changed everything. The attacking ships were not built by a single species. The quantum signatures revealed a complex amalgamation of technologies from at least 6 different civilizations, all welded together into a unified war machine. But more disturbing was the pattern of energy decay in their systems. These ships were old, very old, and they had been traveling for much longer than 6 months. "Captain," Zix said, his voice strained from the effort of maintaining the neural link, "these attackers are not from this galaxy. The quantum signatures indicate they originated from beyond our galactic cluster. They have been traveling for decades, possibly centuries." "That's impossible. No known drive system could maintain a fleet for that long. No known system from our galaxy. But these ships use technology that combines the innovations of multiple species in ways that suggest they have conquered and absorbed the civilizations they encountered. They are not explorers or colonists. They are a force of galactic conquest that has already destroyed entire civilizations." The implications hit the command center like a shockwave. This wasn't just an attack on humanity or even this sector of the galaxy. It was the leading edge of an extragalactic invasion force that had been conquering civilizations for potentially thousands of years. "How many more fleets are there?" Sarah asked. Zix's consciousness pushed deeper into the quantum patterns, following energy trails that stretched back across impossible distances. "Hundreds, maybe thousands. This attack on human space is just one prong of a massive invasion force that is simultaneously attacking multiple galaxies." "Jesus Christ," whispered Lieutenant Rodriguez. "We're not just fighting for our lives, we're fighting for our galaxy." The enemy fleet was now only 20 minutes away, but the nature of the threat had completely changed. If these ships represented the advanced scouts of a galactic invasion force, then stopping them was about more than saving Kepler Station. It was about preventing the complete conquest of everything humanity and their alien allies had built. "Zix, can you determine their weaknesses?" "Yes, their technology is powerful, but it is also unstable. The combination of different civilization systems creates quantum resonance conflicts throughout their ships, if we can exploit those conflicts." "How?" Zix's mind raced through possibilities, his pattern recognition abilities working at their maximum capacity. The Zelani electromagnetic manipulation, combined with the Threx engineering modifications, powered by human weapon systems and coordinated through Vorthak quantum analysis. "Captain, we can create a resonance cascade that will tear their ships apart from within." "Explain." "Every piece of technology has a natural quantum frequency. When technologies from different species are combined, they create interference patterns. The enemy ships are essentially quantum time bombs waiting for the right frequency to trigger them. We can provide that frequency." Sarah stared at the young Vorthak, seeing not just determination in his purple eyes, but a kind of fierce intelligence that reminded her why species formed alliances in the first place. Alone, humans were formidable, but together with allies who brought completely different capabilities to the fight, they could accomplish things that no single species could achieve. "What do you need?" "Full access to the station's power grid, direct neural links to all the alien technical teams, and your permission to push every system on this station beyond its theoretical limits." "You have it, all of it." The next 15 minutes transformed Kepler Station into something that had never existed before, a true multi-species weapon platform. Zelani electromagnetic specialists worked directly with human shield generators to create resonance fields that could penetrate enemy defenses. Threx engineers modified human weapons to fire in precisely calculated patterns that would trigger quantum instabilities in enemy ship hulls. And at the center of it all, Zix maintained neural links with every system, coordinating the entire defense with his species' unparalleled pattern recognition abilities. When the enemy fleet arrived, they found what appeared to be a standard human mining station with typical defensive capabilities. Their sensors detected the expected shield generators, the predictable weapon arrays, and the familiar energy signatures that their intelligence data had prepared them to face. They had no idea that those familiar human systems were now operating in quantum harmony, with technologies and abilities they had never encountered before. The first enemy salvo struck Kepler Station's shields and encountered something unprecedented. Instead of simply absorbing or deflecting the energy, the shields converted it into a resonance pattern that was immediately broadcast back toward the attacking ships. The enemy vessels had been designed to handle human resistance. They had not been designed to handle their own weapons' energy being converted into a quantum frequency that exploited the inherent instabilities in their combined technologies. The lead enemy ship began to shake apart at the quantum level as its own absorbed technologies turned against each other. Within moments, cascade failures spread throughout the entire fleet as ship after ship succumbed to the resonance weapon that Zix and his allies had created. But the young Vorthak wasn't finished. As the enemy fleet disintegrated, he used his quantum analysis abilities to trace their point of origin, following the quantum signatures back across galactic space to map the locations of other invasion fleets. "Captain," he said, his voice weak from the enormous effort but filled with triumph, "I have their invasion routes, their target lists, and the quantum signatures of every ship in their armada. We can warn every species, every civilization, every world they plan to attack." Sarah looked at the tactical display, now showing nothing but expanding debris clouds where the enemy fleet had been. 17 advanced warships had been destroyed without firing a single conventional shot, defeated by an alliance of species working together in ways that transcended their individual capabilities. "Zix," she said quietly, "you didn't just save Kepler Station, you may have saved the galaxy." The young Vorthak smiled, his purple eyes bright with exhaustion and accomplishment. "No, Captain, we saved the galaxy. Humans, Vorthak, Zelani, Threx working together. This is what the enemy could never understand. They conquer and absorb other species, but they never truly unite with them. That is their weakness, and it will be their downfall." As news of the victory spread throughout the galaxy, carried by the quantum trail data that Zix had mapped, something unprecedented began to happen. Species that had never worked together before started combining their technologies and abilities, creating defensive networks that spanned entire star systems. The age of peaceful isolation was over, replaced by something far stronger, an alliance of diverse civilizations united by mutual defense and friendship. The extragalactic invaders had intended to conquer the galaxy by exploiting the supposed weakness of peaceful species. Instead, they had awakened something far more powerful than any single military force: the combined determination of free civilizations to defend their homes and protect each other. And at the center of it all was a young Vorthak who had learned from humans that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from individual power, but from the courage to stand together when everything seems lost. The galaxy would remember Kepler Station not as the site of humanity's desperate last stand, but as the place where true galactic civilization was born.